Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The chamber smelled of alien flowers, engineered to blunt instinct and pacify mammalian nerves. Jonah Reed stood at parade rest in his dress grays, boots polished for the first time in years, trying not to fidget while the Avrax delegation arranged themselves on the elevated dais like living sculptures. Their skin shimmered in shifting opalescent hues, tall and willowy, every movement graceful, as though the laws of gravity had been negotiated rather than obeyed. Behind them, holographic banners unfurled in slow motion, images of Avrax worlds restored to verdant glory, crops rising from blight-scarred soil, children, Avrax children, laughing amid fields of gold, all because of a handful of human agronomists. The lead ambassador, High Curator Lirve, stepped forward. Her voice arrived through the translators as warm honey poured over velvet. People of Earth, Soul Alliance, humanity. She paused, letting the words settle like incense. 20 cycles ago, our core world of Orethe stood on the brink of famine. A plague had taken root in our sacred flora, the very foundation of our biosphere. Our finest minds labored without success. Billions faced slow starvation. Her 8-fingered hand spread in a gesture of humble gratitude. Then you came. Not as conquerors, not as traders seeking profit, but as neighbors offering aid freely given. Your specialists, your farmers, your scientists, shared knowledge we had not thought to ask for. Hybrid seeds, microbial balances, techniques born of stubborn worlds and harder winters. In a single generation, you restored what we feared lost forever. The hologram shifted. Before and after vistas of Orethe, barren red soil blooming into impossible green. We are eternally grateful. The chamber's assembled humans, military brass in crisp uniforms, civilian diplomats, a scattering of scientists like Jonah, shifted with quiet pride. Jonah felt it in his chest, the rare, clean satisfaction of having done something unambiguously good for strangers. Lirve's eyes, large, luminous, kindly, found the front row where the agronomy team stood. Among you stands Jonah Reed, whose innovations with root symbiotic fungi proved decisive. We honor him. We honor all of you. A ripple of applause from both species. Then the ambassador raised one slender arm, and the chamber lights dimmed. A new hologram blossomed above the dais. A planet, azure oceans, emerald continents, swirling white clouds. Perfect, untouched, breathtaking. This is Elisara, Lirve said softly. A garden world in our frontier expanse. Untamed, pristine, rich beyond measure. For centuries it has waited, preserved under our stewardship for a worthy purpose. She turned fully toward the human delegation. As a token of our gratitude, as a permanent gesture of brotherhood, we gift Elisara to humanity. Lock, stock, and soil. Yours to settle. Yours to shape. Yours in perpetuity. Silence fell, thick and stunned. Jonah blinked. Around him, officers exchanged glances. Diplomats leaned forward. Someone behind him whispered, "They're serious?" Lirve smiled, a gentle, parental expression that somehow reached every corner of the room. We will provide transport for your colonists. We will seed initial habitats. We will ensure safe passage through our space. All we ask in return is continued friendship, and that the zone remain demilitarized, a place of peace between siblings. Admiral Crawford, commanding the human delegation, stepped forward. His voice carried the caution of someone who had negotiated with a dozen species. High Curator, this is extraordinarily generous. May I ask why? Lirve's head tilted in what the translators flagged as affectionate amusement. because you have proven yourselves worthy, because young species deserve room to grow, and because we remember what it is to stand on the edge of despair and to be pulled back by unexpected hands." She extended both palms upward, the universal gesture of offering. "Will you accept our gift?" The chamber held its breath. Admiral Crawford looked to his aides, to the scientists, to Jonah. He gave the smallest nod, because he had seen Orithai's recovery with his own eyes, had walked those restored fields, had shaken the hands, or equivalent, of farmers who wept with relief. Crawford turned back to the dais, on behalf of the Sol Alliance. "We accept. Thank you." The Avraks erupted in musical chimes of approval. Humans clapped, some laughing in disbelief. Jonah felt Lena's hand find his. She'd been standing just behind him in civilian attire, invited as his partner. She squeezed once, hard. "A whole planet, Jonah," she whispered, eyes shining. "A real one. For us." He managed a grin, still half-dazed. "Guess we'd better start packing." 3 years later. The colony ship New Dawn dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Elisara system, and the bridge fell silent. Jonah stood at the observation blister with Lena, her arm looped through his, both of them pressed against the viewport like children. Behind them, hundreds of colonists crowded the corridors, feeding live streams back to the rec decks. The planet filled the sky, oceans the color of Earth's Caribbean, continents draped in forest so dense it looked like velvet, cloud patterns swirling in lazy spirals, 2 small moons. No orbital debris, no industrial scars, nothing but invitation. "Paradise," someone breathed over the open channel. Lena laughed, a sound Jonah hadn't heard in years of cramped ship life. They weren't exaggerating. The first shuttles touched down on a meadow plateau where Avrak's engineers had already raised modular habitats, elegant, low-impact structures half-grown from bioprinted lattices. Clean water burbled from springs. Soil samples came back richer than anything on Earth. The air smelled like spring after rain. Within weeks, the colonists sent their first formal message back to Sol, delayed by relay buoys, but jubilant nonetheless. "This is Governor Pro Tem Harlan for Earth Command. We have completed planetary insertion. All systems nominal. Avraks support flawless. Initial surveys confirm. Elisara is everything promised and more. Environmental conditions perfect. Morale through the roof. On behalf of 80,000 new Elysians. Gratitude accepted. We're home." The message ended with cheers echoing through the mic. 20 years passed like a dream. The colony grew. Children were born under alien suns. Cities rose, organic, sprawling in harmony with the land. Farms spread across continents. Jonah and Lena built a homestead on a ridge overlooking a sapphire lake, raising crops that blended human heirlooms with Avrak's hybrids. Lifespans stretched quietly. Gene therapies, once experimental, now standard. People staying vigorous into their 90s and beyond. Jonah, now in his late 50s, still worked the fields with the energy of a man half that age. Lena's laughter filled their home. They traveled. They hosted Avrak's visitors, who came to admire the little siblings' progress. Occasional supply ships from Earth arrived after long journeys, bringing news, immigrants, culture. Everything was perfect, until the day the sky filled with ships. But before the sky changed, life on Elisara remained exactly as the Avraks had promised, quiet, golden, and safe. The double suns dipped low on the horizon, painting the sapphire lake in strokes of molten gold and bruised purple. Jonah Reed leaned on his hoe, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of a calloused hand. He was now 58 years old, yet he still felt 35, those quiet gene therapies keeping him spry without fanfare. He surveyed the field, rows of hybrid maize swaying in the breeze, earth corn blended with Avrak's resilience, yields that would have made any sole farmer stare. A soft laugh carried from the porch. Lena, his wife of 3 decades, waved him in, silhouette rounded with late pregnancy, warmth in everything she did. Once the botanist who'd saved a dying world, now the teacher who shaped young minds on this one. "Jonah Reed, if you don't come to eat before these suns set, I'll feed your portion to the glowbirds," she called. He slung the hoe over his shoulder. "Coming, Professor Reed. Wouldn't want to ruin their diet?" The homestead was modest. Bio-printed walls grown from local vines, solar weave soaking in the last of the light. Inside, the air smelled of bread and herb stew, perfumed with Avrax spices. They sat at the rough-hewn table. Lena rubbed her stomach absent-mindedly. "Baby's kicking like a frontier mule," she said. "Handful incoming." Jonah covered her hand. "We waited long enough. Therapy's finally caught up. Miracle on paradise." She smiled. "Gift from the stars. Hard to believe we once doubted the Avrax. That ceremony, Lirve, handing over a whole world like a bouquet." "Admiral Crawford was wary," Jonah said. "But we earned it. Saved their crops. They gave us a future." Elisera had become home in every sense. 80,000 colonists had grown into over 200,000. Cities like New Haven expanded in graceful lattices of grown architecture. No shortages, no borders. Kids born under alien skies laughing in meadows. Lena's schoolhouse was the center of their valley. Children learning Earth history and alien ecology with equal ease. Jonah loved dropping her off, watching her shepherd the little ones with deft ease. Harlan, the old governor pro tem, still visited the school to retell the colony's beginnings. "Paradise," he'd proclaim. "We sent that message. Everything's perfect." And it stayed true. Avrax shuttles visited occasionally, sleek, elegant, their envoys offering upgrades and taking notes with gentle pride. "Our little siblings flourish," they'd say. If they lingered a little too long, asked a few too many questions, no one thought much of it. One evening, Jonah and Lena sat on the porch, feet dangling above the ridge as glowbirds traced arcs in the dusk. "Imagine it," Lena murmured. "Our kid growing up here. No wars, no ration cards. Just this." Jonah nodded, though something small and vague tugged at him. Reports from New Haven recorded an increase of orbital traffic. Yachts, not shuttles, not supply ships, not typical. Tourists, people claimed. He let it go. "Yeah," he said, "we built something real." Lena shifted, the baby stirring. "Field trip tomorrow, river ecology lesson." "Don't let them throw you in," she laughed. "Promise." They slept under a clear sky. And then the sky changed. It began subtly, extra lights in the constellation patterns, mistaken for meteors. Then more, sleek hulls catching sunlight, taking formation in orbit. Dozens. Then hundreds. Yachts from across the galaxy, shimmering with sensors and bays that did not belong on pleasure craft. Jonah woke to the planetary broadcast crackling alive. Lena sat up, breath catching. A cultured Avrax voice, smooth, but with an edge they had never heard before, filled the air. "Citizens of Elisera, little siblings of the stars, we honor you with revival of an ancient tradition, the Grand Hunt season. You have been selected as this cycle's featured prey, challenging, containable, a delight for our noble patrons. The streams are live. Prepare yourselves for the glory of the chase." Lena's face drained of color. What does that mean?" Jonah grabbed his old service pistol from the drawer, heart hammering. Before he could answer, the first hunting shuttle streaked toward the horizon. The first plasma bolt hit the ground like a god's hammer. Then the broadcast echoed across the valley. People spilled into the streets in panic, parents grabbing children, neighbors shouting warnings, comms flooding with desperate chatter. "Teachers and children to the school!" someone yelled. "Adults to perimeter posts!" It was the only plan they had. The only plan they'd ever needed. Until now. Lena turned to Jonah, breath unsteady but held firm. The kids will be terrified. I'm heading to the school with the other teachers. Jonah nodded. The adults are forming the perimeter. I'll join them. She touched his chest once, grounding him. Keep the home safe. Keep the children safe, he answered. Then they split with the crowd. Lena toward the schoolyard, Jonah toward the ridge, each moving into the roles the colony had practiced but never imagined using. Lena Reed was mid-sentence, rallying her students, calling them to stay close, when the sky split open again. A plasma bolt struck the meadow near the school, turning wildflowers and soil into a crater of molten glass. Children screamed as the shockwave rolled through the grass, knocking small bodies to the ground. A hunting shuttle roared low overhead, sleek and silver, Avrak's markings gleaming like jewelry on a killer. The next bolt erased a row of benches in a spray of fire. Run! Into the trees! Now! She shoved the nearest kids toward the forest edge, body already moving on instinct. 20 faces, 5 to 10 years old, stumbled after her voice. The second bolt tore a burning line through the playground, catching a boy named Tomas. His left arm vanished below the elbow, cauterized at the stump, before he hit the ground. The hunters descended. 3 figures in grav suits dropped from the shuttle's belly, boots humming softly as they touched down. Their opalescent armor shifted colors with every movement, beautiful, elegant, obscene. Energy lances crackled to life. Their voices carried over open comms, broadcast to trillions. Look at the teacher specimen, one purred, still trying to protect her litter. How adorably primitive. Lena planted herself between the fleeing children and the hunters. Half her class had vanished into the forest. The other half clung to her skirts, frozen. Stay close, she said. When I say run, you run. Don't look back. The lead hunter, a tall female with ceremonial scars shimmering across her cheeks, tilted her head. The audience will enjoy this one. She raised her lance. Lena didn't flinch. You gave us this world, she said, loud for the cameras. Remember that when you burn. The hunter laughed and struck. Lena twisted, taking the blade across her shoulder instead of her heart. The energy scorched through muscle, but she grabbed the lance, yanking the hunter off balance. Go, now! The remaining children bolted. The other hunters opened fire. Plasma bolts tore the meadow apart. A girl with braids took a hit to the torso, her body bursting into red mist. Another child's leg vanished at the knee. He crawled until a second bolt finished him. Lena held on, even as her shoulder smoked. The lead hunter ripped her lance free, taking half of Lena's deltoid with it. Blood poured down her side. She still stood. The hunter produced a grenade. Small, elegant, unmistakably Avrak's. For the stream, she said, turning her helmet toward the camera. Lena met the camera lens, her teeth locked tight to keep the pain from showing. Tell your audience this. We remember gratitude too. The grenade rolled under her feet. The explosion was a newborn son. Children, teacher, grass, soil, everything within 10 meters vanished in a storm of burning shrapnel and vaporized bodies. When the fire faded, only a crater remained. Jonah heard it from 3 kilometers away. He'd been at the ridge, coordinating with neighbors, when the valley lit up in a blossom of fire. Comms drowned in screams. Hunting shuttles streaked across the sky. Orbital jammers cut off escape routes. He jumped into the hover skiff, gunning the engine toward the school. He arrived to a massacre. Charred bodies, scattered limbs, blood turning the dirt black. The air thick with smoke and the stench of cooked flesh. 10 surviving children crawled from the trees, sobbing when they saw him. Mr. Reed! Mrs. Reed! She told us to run! Jonah barely heard them. At the crater's edge he found her pendant, silver chain fused to burnt metal and bone. Part of a hand still clutched it. He fell to his knees. His wife, his unborn child, half her class. Gone. The world dimmed. Then the rage came, not loud, not wild, Cold. Absolute. He rose slowly. The children watched, trembling. Overhead, another shuttle banked lazily, hunters laughing over open comms. "Excellent opening sequence," one remarked. The teacher's defiance scored high with viewers, moving to secondary settlement for more sport. Jonah looked up at the sky, once peaceful. "You wanted a hunt," he whispered. He picked up a fallen energy lance, its owner already gone. "You'll get one." He turned to the surviving children, voice steady and sharp as broken glass. "Into the forest! We're going deep!" As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, those same stars that had watched 20 years of peace, Jonah Reed led the survivors into the trees, the lance humming in his grip like a promise. 3 days. That's how long Jonah figured the hunt had been running when his group finally stopped running. Deep in the emerald heart of Elisera's northern forest, where the canopy blotted out the suns and the air hung thick with moss and rot, they'd carved out a pocket of hell for the hunters. 10 surviving children hidden in a cave system with 2 elderly volunteers who'd refused to flee. 30 adults, farmers, mechanics, teachers turned killers, gathered around Jonah like iron filings to a magnet. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten more than handfuls of nutrient fruit. The energy lance from the meadow was strapped across his back, its hum a constant reminder. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the crater, the pendant fused to bone. Lena's hand still curled as if shielding someone. So he worked. The first trap was simple. Farmer's work, really. A maintenance drone, one of the Avrac's gifts that kept irrigation flowing, now gutted and repacked with scavenged power cells and sharpened rebar. Jonah wired it to a pressure plate buried under a false trail. When the 3-man hunter patrol glided in on grav boots, arrogant, chatting on open channel about flushing the nest, the plate triggered. The explosion was intimate. Shrapnel punched through opalescent armor like it was silk. The lead hunter, a male with ceremonial gold inlays, took the brunt center mass. His chest cavity burst outward in a spray of shimmering blood and splintered chitin, ribs flaring like broken petals. He was still screaming when the second hunter's grav boot failed, dropping him into the vine snare below. The vines were local, thick, fast-growing, the kind Jonah had spent 20 years coaxing into trellises. Now they were laced with monofilament wire salvaged from fencing. They whipped tight around ankles and throats. The hunter thrashed, energy lance firing wild into the canopy until Jonah stepped from cover and drove a harvesting sickle through the visor slit. The blade grated on bone. Hot blood jetted across his forearms. The body went limp, twitching. The third hunter tried to lift. Jonah raised the captured plasma tracker and put 3 bolts through the grav unit. The hunter pinwheeled down, smashing into a trunk hard enough to crack armor and spine. He lay groaning, legs useless, while the survivors closed in. Knives, kitchen, field, whatever worked. Finished it slow. They left the bodies hanging as warnings, helmets cracked open, faces frozen in shock. The stream caught it all. Across the galaxy, trillions watched the feed stutter, triumphant hunter cams suddenly showing their owners gutted and dangling like meat. Jonah's people grew bolder. They poisoned water sources with distilled neurotoxin from glowvine sap, colorless, tasteless. A noble hunting party drank from a pristine stream during a break. Within minutes they convulsed, foaming at the mouth, elegant limbs clawing at throats as nerves fired randomly. One clawed his own eyes out before the toxin finished him. The stream chat, once full of laughing emojis, went silent. They ambushed a supply drop. Evrac's arrogance again. Shuttles landing in clearings to resupply their sporting guests. Jonah's team hit one at dusk. 6 hunters unloading crates of ammo and stimulants. The fight was ugly. Close. No room for elegance. A farmer named Kira took a lance through the thigh, artery severed. She bled out screaming while cauterizing her own wound with the blade's tip. Jonah answered by emptying a captured tracker into the shuttle cockpit. Pilot's head vaporized in a pink cloud, craft slewing into the trees and erupting in secondary blasts. The hunters died messy, one decapitated by a machete swing that sent the head spinning into the fire, another gutted and left writhing as intestines steamed on the ground. They took everything usable: weapons, comm gear, armor plates, and the comm relay from the lead hunter's suit. Jonah worked through the night in a cave lit by glowvines, fingers slick with blood and grease. The Avrak's encryption was layered, but it was built on predictable elegance, patterns he'd seen in their gifts over 20 years. He cracked it by dawn, patching into the orbital broadcast network that was pumping the hunt live. The galaxy was still watching. Jonah dragged the surviving hunter, a young noble, barely bleeding now thanks to auto-sealants, into frame. The Avrax's face was pale beneath the opalescence, ceremonial scars twisted in terror. Jonah shoved the helmet cam close. "Talk," he said, voice gravel and smoke. "Tell them why you're here." The hunter whimpered. Jonah pressed the sickle to his throat until blood welled. We thought you'd break easy," the noble gasped, voice cracking across the stream. "Like the others. Containable prey. A tradition. You were grateful pets." Jonah leaned in, face filling the feed, covered in dirt. Blood. 3 days stubble, eyes dead. "Pets." He looked straight into the lens. "You gifted us Elisera, a supposed paradise, called us siblings. Then you came to slaughter us for sport." He gestured to the hanging bodies behind him, the poisoned stream, the burning shuttle wreckage. "This is what gratitude looks like when you betray it." He turned the cam to show the survivors, hard faces, salvaged weapons, children's drawings of lost families pinned to cave walls. "Message to Sol Alliance. The signal's out. We're holding. Come armed. 3 days. Make it burn." Then, to the galactic audience, "Hunt's not over. You just became the prey." He cut the feed. Static rippled across trillions of screens. For the first time in days, the Avrak's streams showed something other than triumph. Far across the void, on the edge of human space, relay buoys caught the burst transmission. Alarms screamed in Sol command centers. Admirals stared at footage of gutted hunters and Jonah's blood-streaked face. Fleet orders went out immediately. FTL drives spooled. 3 days. Jonah powered down the relay, stood, and looked at his people. "Rest while you can," he said. "We've got more lessons to teach." In the distance, thunder rolled. Not weather, but another shuttle searching. The forest waited, patient and green. 2 days left. Jonah Reed crouched in the undergrowth, watching a Avrak's hunting party move through the valley below like they still owned the sky. 5 of them, grav boots humming soft, armor catching stray shafts of sunlight through the canopy. They'd learned caution since the broadcast. No more open boasting, but arrogance clung to them like perfume. They were tracking a false trail Jonah's people had laid at dawn. Boot prints. Blood dragged from a fresh kill. A child's toy left forgotten in the mud. The lead hunter, a scarred veteran with gold filigree on his pauldrons, raised a fist. The party halted. Sensors swept the trees. Jonah's thumb rested on the ultrasonic trigger salvaged from a herd control device. He waited until they clustered tight, scanning the decoy trail. Then he pressed it. The forest answered. A thunder of hooves erupted from the ridgeline. 1,000-kilogram grazers, 6-horned and thick-skinned. The same herds Jonah had spent years fencing away from crops. Now they charged blind with rage, driven mad by the inaudible tone. The first wave hit the hunters like a living avalanche. The scarred veteran took a horn through the gut. It punched out his back in a spray of opalescent blood and spinal fragments, lifting him off his feet and pinning him to a tree. He screamed. A high, musical note cut short when a second beast trampled him, hooves pulping armor and flesh into the mud. Another hunter tried to lift on grav boots. Too late. The herd swallowed him. Bones cracked like dry branches, body tossed ragdoll until it wedged under a fallen log, limbs bent wrong, face frozen in shock. The remaining 3 scattered. Jonah's people rose from cover. Plasma fire stitched the air. Kira, thigh still bandaged from the earlier fight, took a bolt to the chest. It burned through lung and heart. She dropped without a sound, eyes wide on the green sky she'd once loved. Jonah answered with the energy lance. The blade of blue fire carved the nearest hunter from collarbone to hip, armor parted like silk, the body split and folded, steaming entrails spilling onto fern roots. The hunter's scream gurgled into silence as blood filled his throat. The last 2 ran. They didn't get far. Across Elisara, the story repeated. Resistance cells, coordinated now by short-range encrypted bursts, turned the planet into a meat grinder. In the eastern continent, survivors hijacked a grounded shuttle, overloaded its reactor, and flew it kamikaze into an orbital cluster of luxury yachts. The blast chain reacted through 3 vessels, hulls blooming open like metal flowers, debris raining fire across the night sky. In the southern wetlands, poison mist from fermented glowvine sap drifted over a noble encampment. Hunters woke clawing at their own skin as capillaries burst, eyes bleeding, elegant features swelling purple before they suffocated on swollen tongues. The streams, once triumphant, now carried panic. Galactic viewers watched Avrak's nobles beg for extraction, voices cracking. Avrak's officials appeared on emergency channels, promising the hunt was a cultural misunderstanding, offering reparations, anything to stop the footage of their elites dying like vermin. Jonah's network captured a high-ranking organizer, Lord Vaketh, bloodkin to Lirve herself. They dragged him to a clearing, bound with his own monofilament cables. Jonah forced the helmet cam live again. Vaketh's face filled screens across the galaxy, once proud, now bruised and bleeding from a split lip. "Tell them," Jonah said quietly, sickle at the noble's throat. The Avrak swallowed. We revived the tradition believing you would provide suitable sport. Containable. Grateful. We did not anticipate. Jonah pressed harder. Blood welled. "Say it plain." "You were meant to break," Vaketh whispered. "Like the others. We were wrong." Jonah looked into the lens. Wrong costs blood. He drew the sickle across the throat in one clean pull. Arterial spray painted the camera red before the feed cut to static. The galaxy went quiet. By the end of the second day, hunter numbers had halved. Yachts clustered tight in orbit, shields up, refusing to deploy more shuttles. Survivors on the ground barricaded in crashed craft, rationing power, whispering about extraction that never came. Jonah's people paid too. Every ambush cost lives. The cave shelters filled with wounded. Children who'd survived the first day now carried water and ammo without being asked. The forest stank of smoke and death. Paradise scarred black in patches. That night, Jonah stood on a ridge with the remnants of his original group. Exhaustion carved lines deep around his eyes. His hands, once calloused from planting, were crusted with dried blood that wasn't his. Below, the sapphire lake reflected burning wreckage drifting down from orbit. "Tomorrow," he said, voice raw, 3 days since the signal. A young mechanic, barely 20, checked a salvaged scanner. FTL signatures on the edge of the system, multiple, big ones. Jonah nodded. The sky was still dark, but for the first time in days, the stars felt like allies. He looked toward the crater where Lena had died, now miles away, but always close. "One more day," he told the wind. "Hold one more day." In the distance, a Avrak's flare rose, white, desperate, a call for rescue that would never answer in time. The forest closed around them, patient and hungry. The sky cracked open at dawn on the third day, and Admiral Marcus Crawford brought hell with him. Jonah Reed watched from the ridge as the first human warships dropped out of FTL. Ugly, functional bricks of alloy and anger, nothing like the elegant Evrax yachts. The Sol Alliance fleet was modest by galactic standards. A dozen cruisers, twice as many frigates, troop transports riding their wakes. But they came burning hot, drives flaring white, missile bays already open. From the flag bridge of the heavy cruiser SAS Ashbound, Crawford watched the Avrax orbital cluster scatter like glittering insects. He was 74, lean as fence wire, face carved from decades of frontier patrols and lost colonies. His left eye was a matte black augmetic, a souvenir from a pirate raid 15 years back, and right now it burned cold. "Comms, open channel to the whole fleet," he said, voice flat, clipped, the kind of comm that came after fury had burned itself pure. "Channel open, Admiral." Crawford leaned forward, hands braced on the rail. "This is Admiral Marcus Crawford, Sol Alliance Task Force Retribution. 24 hours ago, we watched civilians, our civilians, butchered for sport on a world the Avrax gifted us. That debt comes due now. No quarter asked, none given. Weapons free. For Elisara." He killed the mic. The bridge crew answered with a roar that rattled the bulkheads. The orbital war began without ceremony. Crawford's flagship SAS Ashbound led the charge, an ugly slab of armor and missile tubes that looked built from spite. The first Avrax dreadnought tried to interpose itself, broadcasting frantic demands for parley. Crawford's answer was a full alpha strike. "Rail batteries 1 through 6. Target their spine. Fire." The deck shuddered as hypervelocity slugs left the rails. They punched through elegant shields like paper and kept going, coring the dreadnought from bow to stern. Secondary explosions walked its length in perfect sequence. The ship cracked open, venting atmosphere and bodies in glittering spirals. Crawford didn't blink. "Next wave. Missile frigates. Staggered salvo. I want overlapping debris fields. Make them fly through their own dead." Missiles swarmed. Avrax point defenses lit the void in desperate lacework, but Crawford had planned for arrogance. The second salvo came in low and fast, riding the debris wake of the first. Yachts blossomed into fireballs, luxury hulls peeling back like flowers made of gold and screams. On the ground, Jonah's hacked relay pinged the fleet with targeting data. Crawford saw the meadow crash site flagged. Silvi's yacht down hard. "Ground Team Alpha, this is Ashbound Command," he transmitted, voice steady. "Package is on the ground. Clear the nobles. We'll handle the sky." Jonah's gravel reply came back. "Copy, Admiral. Leave some for us." Crawford allowed himself half a smile. A gilded Evrax command yacht tried to break for deep space. Crawford tracked it personally. "Gunnery. Battery 9. Single slug. Engine cluster. I want it limping." The shot left the rail. The yacht's drive section disintegrated in a silent flash. It tumbled, bleeding air and fuel. "Boarding parties. Take it alive if you can. I want prisoners who can talk on camera." Marines in heavy armor launched in assault pods, hungry. Down on the surface, Jonah's network moved. Debris rained. Burning fragments of luxury yachts streaked across Elisara's sky like falling stars, slamming into oceans and forests with thunderous impacts. One yacht, shields failed, spiraled down over Jonah's valley. It hit the Sapphire Lake at terminal velocity. Water flash-boiled into a mushroom cloud of steam, the shockwave flattening trees for kilometers. Coordinated now with orbital fire control via the hacked relay, they herded the remaining hunters into kill zones. A noble barricade in the ruins of New Haven, 30 hunters, shields linked, called desperately for extraction. Jonah answered with a guided strike from SAS Ashbound. The orbital lance punched through their dome like a spear through paper. When the light faded, only a glassy crater remained. Armor fused into slag, bodies melted into grotesque sculptures. The last stand was personal. Lord Vaketh's flagship, a gilded yacht, tried to flee low over the northern forest, engines screaming. Jonah's team had waited for this one. Salvaged anti-air trackers, jury-rigged from hunter gear, locked on. Missiles rose from the canopy in a ragged volley. The yacht jinked, elegant as ever, but one warhead caught a wing. It tumbled, shedding pieces, and crashed into a meadow Jonah knew well. The same meadow where Lena had once taken her class for lessons under the suns. Jonah led the assault team in on hover skiffs. They found the survivors crawling from the wreckage, 6 nobles, armor cracked, opalescent blood trailing. One was High Huntress Sylvi, direct descendant of Lirve herself, the architect of this season's revival. She stood defiant amid the burning grass, energy lance humming, even as her guards fell to plasma fire and blades. Jonah stepped forward alone. Sylve's luminous eyes fixed on him. "Primitive," she spat, voice still cultured despite the blood on her lips. "You will be erased for this insolence. The Avrax." Jonah raised the same sickle that had ended her kinsman. "Your great-aunt Lirve gave us this world," he said quietly. "Called it a gift, a token of gratitude." Sylve's lance flared. Jonah sidestepped, farmer's instincts honed by decades in the dirt. He closed the distance in 2 strides and buried the sickle in her chest. The blade grated between ribs. Hot blood sprayed his face. She gasped, a musical note turning wet, and dropped to her knees. He twisted the blade once, felt it scrape heart. "For Lena," he said, "for every name you turned into sport." She toppled sideways, eyes dimming, the meadow grass drinking her blood like it had once drunk gentle rain. The last hunter tried to run. Jonah's people let him get 10 meters before plasma bolts ended it. Above, the orbital battle wound down. Human boarding parties stormed the remaining yachts. Avrax nobles, once lounging in luxury, died in corridors, begging in a dozen languages. Some surrendered. Most didn't live long enough. The final Avrax dreadnought broadcast unconditional surrender, only to be rammed amidships by a frigate whose captain had lost family on Elisera. The explosion lit the sky for minutes. When the firing stopped, the void around Elisera was littered with cooling wreckage. Jonah stood in the meadow, sickle dripping, and looked up. A human shuttle descended, Sol Alliance markings crisp against the dawn. Troops poured out, weapons lowered when they saw the survivors waiting, bloodied but unbowed. A young officer approached Jonah, eyes wide at the carnage. "Mr. Reed, Fleet Command says, the planet's secure." Jonah nodded once. He walked to the edge of the crash crater, where Sylve's body cooled, and activated the hijacked relay one last time. The galaxy, those still watching, saw his face, streaked with blood and ash. "This is Elisara," he said. "Formerly your gift, now our world, paid for in full." He looked straight into the lens. The feed cut to static. Behind him, human troops began the grim work of recovery. Children emerged from caves. Survivors embraced under a sky finally free of yachts. Elisera was scarred, blackened forests, glassy craters, blood in the soil, but it breathed free. Jonah knelt in the grass where Lena had once taught lessons, and for the first time in days, let himself feel the weight of it all. Above, Crawford looked out the viewport at Elisara below, scarred but unbroken, and spoke to the bridge at large. "Tell the Avrax, if you ever hunt us again, we'll bring the fire to your doorstep." The war was over.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.